Across the vast frozen landscapes of the Pleistocene, a different kind of human reigned. For nearly 300,000 years, they were the undisputed masters of Ice Age Europe and Asia. They were the Neanderthals, strong, resilient, and possessed of an intelligence that we are only now beginning to comprehend. They thrived in a world of unimaginable hardship. And then, around 30,000 years ago, they vanished. The question of why this powerful hominin disappeared has haunted us ever since. Did they leave an echo, a genetic ghost that still walks among us? Or were they simply a dead end on the great tree of life? The story we are told often begins in a German gorge, the Neander Valley, in the year 1856. It was here, we learn, that quarry workers unearthed the bones that would give this ancient people their name. But history is rarely so tidy. This famous discovery was not the first, but in fact the third. Nearly 30 years earlier, in what is now Belgium, the skull of a Neanderthal child, Angus II, had already been found. And in 1848, a second skull, Gibraltar I, was recovered from a quarry on the Iberian Peninsula. For decades, these crucial pieces of the puzzle lay unrecognized in museum collections.
As the years passed, more remains were unearthed across a staggering territory, from the shores of the Atlantic to the mountains of Central Asia and the deserts of the Middle East. Skeletons of the old, the young, males and females. Each discovery added another brushstroke to the portrait of their existence, revealing their physical form, their capabilities, and the world they inhabited. It also gave rise to a storm of theories, from the rigorously scientific to the purely fantastical, all attempting to explain their ultimate fate.
For much of the 20th century, science cast the Neanderthal in a specific role: the missing link. They were seen as the necessary, brutish chapter in the evolutionary story that turned an ancient ape-man into a modern Homo Sapiens. They were placed just before the Cro-Magnons, a convenient, if ill-fitting, piece of the puzzle. This forced narrative ignored troubling anatomical inconsistencies. To make them fit, they were often depicted as stooped, bent-kneed primitives, a posture now widely disputed. The evidence that in many respects, such as brain capacity, the supposedly primitive Neanderthals were more developed than the advanced Cro-Magnons was conveniently set aside.
But science does not stand still. With the dawn of new technologies and analytical methods, a series of sensational discoveries shattered the old consensus. The story of a simple, linear progression was proven definitively false. The Neanderthals were not our direct ancestors. They were a parallel humanity, a sister species that walked the earth beside our own for a time, before their footsteps faded into silence, leaving us to wonder what it meant to be the last humans standing.
The story of our own species is not a straight line, but a tangled family tree, haunted by the ghosts of those who were almost us. For millennia, we have looked upon the reconstructed face of the Neanderthal and seen a brutish, stooped ancestor, a primitive stage we thankfully outgrew. But this comforting image is a profound illusion.
The few percentage points of Neanderthal genes found in modern Europeans and Asians are not a simple certificate of direct descent. This gent progenitor, or perhaps the result of rare encounters between their kind and other archaic humans. Encounters with the Cro-Magnons, for instance, the true direct ancestors who walked into Europe and met their human cousins. Tellingly, in the DNA of modern African peoples, whose continent was the very cradle of our bipedal journey, the Neanderthal signature fades to almost nothing, a mere few tenths of 1%. The truth, then, is inescapable. The Neanderthal does not stand behind us on the evolutionary chain. They stand beside us, a parallel humanity that took a different path.
And this is where the mystery deepens into a staggering paradox. How could this other human, so full of promise, become evolution's most prominent failure? We know their brain was immense, its volume often exceeding that of our own. Their physical presence was formidable. Even a Neanderthal woman possessed a raw power, a breadth of shoulder and density of muscle that would dwarf most modern European men. Their barrel-shaped chests were vast engines of power. And while the Cro-Magnons, with their high foreheads and gracile frame,
Furthermore, they held a crucial home field advantage. They were the native Europeans, born of its harsh Ice Age climates and masters of its landscapes. They did not need to undertake the great, perilous migrations out of Africa that defined our own ancestors. Yet, it was the African newcomers who inherited the Earth, while Europe's indigenous hominin vanished, leaving behind only scattered bones and saint.
To understand their fate, we must look not at their strengths, but at the hidden costs of that power. The first clue lies in their magnificent physiology. Recent analysis reveals a critical vulnerability. To maintain their massive muscular bodies, a Neanderthal required a staggering 1/3 more calories than a taller, yet more slender Cro-Magnon. Their bodies were high-performance machines with a voracious appetite. In a world of fluctuating resources, this was a fatal flaw. In a landscape where a band of Homo sapiens could feel comfortable, even sated, a Neanderthal family would already be in the grip of starvation. A chronic insufficiency of food is a direct path to a sharp decline in fertility, a collapse in the population's ability to reproduce itself, and a slow, grinding degradation of the entire species.
Another common suspect has always been the climate, a world plunging into ice. But here too, the story is not so simple. We now know that by the time the Neanderthals began their final, inexorable decline, the planet's climate was not in the throes of a cataclysmic shift. It was, in fact, entering a period of relative stability. Their extinction was not a sudden event, but a slow fade over thousands of years. It seems their highly specialized bodies, perfectly tuned for a specific kind of cold, were less adaptable to the subtle fluctuations. In the end, the saga of the Neanderthal is a stark lesson in the true nature of survival. Evolution does not necessarily reward the strongest, or even the most intelligent in absolute terms. It rewards efficiency. It rewards adaptability. It rewards the design that can weather the storm with the least amount of fuel. They were a masterpiece of evolution, a powerful and intelligent form of humanity. But when the world changed, ever so slightly, their very strengths became their anchors, pulling them down into the silent depths of extinction, leaving only us to wonder at the other humanity that could have been.
They were masters of a frozen continent. For hundreds of thousands of years, the Neanderthals thrived in conditions that defy modern imagination. At the very peak of the last glacial period, when ice sheets a mile thick ground across Europe, they were not merely surviving, they were expanding, multiplying, and dominating their realm. Their very biology was a testament to this resilience. The intricate network of blood vessels within their broad nasal passages was a marvel of evolution, a natural furnace designed to warm the brutal, frozen air before it ever reached their lungs. They were, in every sense, the children of the ice. And yet, somehow, the children of a warmer African sun proved stronger.
The simple narrative of climate change, of a people too specialized for the cold failing in a warmer world, falls apart under scrutiny. The truth may be far more complex. While direct evidence of the climate killing them is scarce, there are compelling facts that support a more insidious, indirect version of this story. The weather didn't need to freeze the Neanderthals themselves. It only needed to starve them. Rapid, violent climate shifts could have triggered a catastrophic collapse in their primary food source, the great herds of mammoth, bison, and woolly rhino they had hunted for millennia. As the megafauna vanished, so too did the foundation of their world.
But perhaps the most fatal vulnerability was not in their environment, but within their own society. Neanderthals, it seems, lived a life of profound intimacy and isolation. Their family groups were small, typically numbering just 10 to 20 individuals. Consider for a moment the contrast. The ancestors of Homo Sapiens, who for a time existed alongside them, were already gathering in clans of 130 or more. In the unforgiving calculus of survival, this difference is everything. A small, isolated population, breeding only within its own group, inevitably walks a tightrope over genetic decay. Each generation becomes a little less stable, a little more fragile, until the entire lineage simply fades.
Into this precarious existence stepped a new kind of human. The arrival of numerous and more dynamic tribes of Homo sapiens presented a series of existential threats. Was it a war of annihilation? A slow, violent replacement across the generations? Or was it a story of absorption, their unique genetic legacy swallowed by a much larger, more successful population? The evidence for all these scenarios is tantalizingly incomplete. We also cannot ignore a more primal danger. As Neanderthal groups weakened, generation by generation, they may have become easier prey not just for other humans, but for the great predators of the age. For a cave lion or a pack of hyenas, a struggling Neanderthal clan would have been an excellent and tragically accessible source of food.
Then there is the invisible killer, an enemy they could neither see nor fight.
Some researchers now believe the end came not with a spear, but with a microbe. The first Homo sapiens arriving in Europe were carriers of parasites and infections born from millennia of coexistence in a different land. To the Neanderthals, these were entirely novel pathogens. Their immune systems, honed against the dangers of Ice Age Europe, were utterly unprepared. For them, these invisible viruses could have sparked a catastrophe far more devastating than the Spanish flu of the last century, or the coronaviruses of our own time. It would have been a silent, unstoppable plague, a biological ghost that swept through their scattered families, leaving devastation in its wake.
The inquiry, of course, continues. Scientists are constantly exploring other factors, other indirect causes that may have contributed to their disappearance from the Earth, leaving behind no evolutionary descendants. Among these are newer hypotheses, some still too recent to be confirmed or refuted, that speak of vast global changes in the very life processes of the planet itself. We are left with fragments, a robust thigh bone, a carefully crafted stone point, a whisper of their DNA inside our own. They were a different kind of humanity, a parallel path that ultimately reached its end. And in their silent, vanished world, we see a sobering reflection of the delicate thread by which any existence, including our own, truly hang. For millennia, they endured. Against the crushing ice and the unforgiving wilderness, the Neanderthals were masters of survival. And then, in a flicker of geological time, they were gone. For generations, we have sought the cause, pointing to competition with our own ancestors, to the cruel whims of a changing climate. But new evidence suggests a far more profound and terrifying culprit, one that came not from the Earth below, but from the cosmos above. The story begins some 42,000 years ago, when the very shield that protected life on our world began to falter. Scientists now believe that Earth's magnetic field, the invisible guardian that deflects lethal solar winds and cosmic rays, suffered an anomalous and catastrophic transformation. It wasn't merely a weakening of its power, a lessening of its grip on the planet. The evidence, first brought to the forefront in the influential journal Science on February 19, 2021, points to something far more dramatic.
a full geomagnetic reversal.
For a period of several hundred years, an eternity for those who lived through it, the poles literally flipped. North became south. The compass, had it existed, would have spun in madness. This hypothesis, known as the Lachambe excursion, was not entirely new. For decades, geologists had known of ancient magnetic oddities. But the prevailing consensus held that the last great reversal occurred nearly 800,000 years ago, long before the emergence of Homo Sapiens or our Neanderthal cousins. The Lachambe event, named for a flow of prehistoric lava in central France, where its magnetic signature was first discovered in the mid-20th century, changed everything. It placed a planetary catastrophe squarely in the timeline of the Neanderthals' final days.
By modeling these ancient events, researchers have painted a grim picture. As the magnetic field collapsed to a fraction of its strength, the planet was left naked to the universe. The ozone layer was shredded. Unfiltered radiation from the sun and deep space poured into the atmosphere, triggering violent climate shifts and creating an environment hostile to life. This, the authors proposed, was the ancient ecological disaster that may have sealed the Neanderthals' fate.
Of misfortunes, a perfect storm of pressures that their kind could no longer withstand.
And here, we must confront a difficult truth. For all their strength and resilience, the Neanderthals, even at the historical end of their long existence, lacked the cognitive tools to anticipate their own demise. They were reacting, not strategizing. They moved their habitats, they adapted as best they could, but their efforts were slow, inefficient, and ultimately futile. Own world, but utterly unaware of the larger forces rendering that world uninhabitable. They did not know they were dying out.
Meanwhile, another human species watched the same skies and walked the same ravaged landscapes. The Cro-Magnons, our direct ancestors, were adapting differently. They possessed a more flexible, more creative intelligence. They were not just surviving, they were innovating. While the Neanderthals were slowly overwhelmed, our ancestors found a way through the chaos. Reason, perhaps, was the ultimate survival tool. It helped them overcome an unimaginable number of obstacles, laying the foundation for a completely new branch of the human story.
That branch grew into a civilization that would build steamships and iron roads, that would invent computers and fly to the stars. It would create robots in its own image and even master the cloning of living things. And yet, here lies the profound, chilling paradox of our existence. The threat of extinction looms over us no less than it did for the Neanderthals. The difference is simply this. We are not blind to the forces we have unleashed. We understand perfectly the essence of what is happening. They walked toward the abyss in ignorance. We, their heirs, stare directly into it, fully comprehending the nature of the fall. We gaze upon the horizon of our own making, charting futures among the stars, and yet a disquiet lingers. A sense that for all our power, for all our perceived dominion, we are profoundly vulnerable. We see the potential for a future born of our own folly, a sad and desolate end, yet so few of us seem moved to act, to preserve not only our own existence, but the breathtaking beauty of this world that gave us life. It is a paradox born of a deep and forgotten truth. We have built an empire of concrete and steel, convinced of our supremacy. We believe ourselves to be the most powerful, the most intelligent beings on this planet. No other creature can match our capacity to invent, to build, to shape the very destiny of the Earth with a force second only to the cosmos itself. But this belief is a comforting illusion. A grand story we tell ourselves. The hard, unvarnished fact is that for the millions of years of our evolutionary journey, From the most ancient hominids to this very moment, humanity has never, not for a single second, been the planet's true apex predator.
This means that today, just as in the shadowed forests of prehistory, there are animals for whom an ancient Australopithecus, a Neanderthal, or a modern human in the wrong place at the wrong time are all one and the same. A potential meal, a collection of calories. Many of our ancestral enemies have, of course, been erased from the earth, casualties of evolution or victims of our own relentless expansion. But others have endured. They have evolved alongside us, adapting to our sprawling urban world, never quite forgetting the ancient habit of hunting the two-legged ape.
To understand this forgotten war, our journey must begin in a world almost unimaginable. We must travel back to the Miocene epoch. It was here, some 20 million years ago, that a creature known as proconsul moved through the canopy. In these ancient beings, scientists see the faintest outline of our own form, a common ancestor, perhaps, from a time before the great apes and the human line had truly parted ways. They bore the traits of both, a living testament to a crossroads in evolution.
But proconsul was not a titan. Weighing a mere 20 to 30 kilograms, it was a small and fragile creature. It possessed neither the strength, the tools, nor the intellect to stand against the true carnivores of its era. It was a beginning, a fragile foothold on the ladder of life. And for the legions of predators that stalked the Miocene world, it was simply food. In that ancient, humid world, danger was the very texture of the air. Proconsul was prey for almost any hunter larger and swifter than itself. A shadow passing overhead could belong to a colossal bird of prey. A rustle in the undergrowth might betray the presence of a creodont, a brutish mammal predator long since vanished. To descend from the trees was to enter a realm where death could come from any direction, silent and absolute. This was the world that forged us, a world of constant ambient fear, where survival was not a given, but a desperate daily struggle. The echoes of that fear still reside within us, a primal ghost in our machine consciousness.
As our ancient ancestors evolved, as their minds sharpened and their hands learned new devastating skills, a profound shift began to ripple through the primordial world. With each generation that spread across the planet, they became a more formidable challenge for their natural enemies. A great reversal was underway. Slowly, inexorably, those creatures that had for millennia been the hunters of humanity were finding themselves the hunted. In the dawn of our genus, the first true humans, Homo habilis, the handyman, were still a fragile presence on the landscape. They were still, very much, prey. In the waterways of ancient Africa lurked a terror for which they were a favored meal, an ancient crocodile, a species we now call Crocodylus anthropophagus. The name given to this historic 8-meter-long reptile speaks for itself. Translated from the Greek, the term means nothing less than the man-eater.
In 2007, within a sun-scorched gorge in Africa, its fossilized remains were unearthed, and lying nearby were the shattered, fossilized fragments of its victims, the skeletons of not one, but two distinct hominid species. There were the remains of these Paranthropus, ironically, who are thought by some to be among the very first to master the art of crafting stone tools. The evidence left in the bones, the puncture and drag marks, allowed researchers to conclude with a chilling certainty that these man-eater crocodiles did not attack our ancestors sporadically, as can happen today. No, this was something far more systematic. It seems our forebears formed a significant and perhaps reliable part of the diet of these relentless reptiles.
Yet the danger was not confined to the water's edge. For centuries upon centuries, for millennia, another fierce and merciless hunter stalked the shadows of our world: the saber-toothed cat. The beast is often mislabeled a saber-toothed tiger, though from a scientific standpoint, the term is incorrect. Scientists themselves typically refer to these extinct animals as smilodons. They existed, in part, parallel to various species of ancient humans for an astonishing span of more than 2 million years, only vanishing from the Earth a mere 10,000 years ago. In size, the saber-toothed cats were significantly larger than any feline predator alive today, with some males weighing up to half a ton.
The most intimate, the most desperate contact between smilodons, a species in our own evolution, lived in a period from 800,000 to 130,000 years ago. They were the descendants of the first Homo erectus and the ancestors of the Neanderthals. In what was, without exaggeration, a mortal struggle for survival between man and smilodon, it was the great cat that ultimately suffered a crushing defeat. Yet our ancestors did not hunt these enormous felines for food. Their victory was achieved through indirect means.
Humans learned to craft ever more sophisticated tools of the hunt. Over thousands of years, armed with superior spears and strategy, they decimated the great herds of megafauna that were the smilodon's primarchon. As the mammoths and giant bison fell to human hunters, the saber-toothed cats starved. Their reign was ended not by a climactic battle, but by an empty stomach. It was one of the first and most profound instances of humanity reshaping an entire ecosystem to its will. And this deadly coexistence, this war of attrition with the planet's other great predators, was far from over.
Deep within the frozen silence of prehistoric caves, a story is written in bone. Here, the remains of our ancestors lie intermingled with those of a titan, the cave bear. For millennia, these two species were locked in a desperate struggle, not for food, but for the most fundamental of needs: shelter. In the biting cold of the Ice Age, a dry cave was the difference between life and death.
The bear, Ursus spelaeus, was a colossal creature, far too formidable a prize to be hunted for its meat alone. And for this giant, which was surprisingly mostly herbivorous, a human was of little interest as prey. Their conflict was a territorial one, a primal war for dominion over the dark. This standoff raged for an immense span of time, beginning perhaps 100,000 years ago and lasting until the bear's final days, some 30,000 years before our time. The outcome was, in hindsight, predictable. Humanity endured. The cave bear did not.
But the dangers our ancestors faced were not confined to the shadows of the earth. They also came from above. The sky, a symbol of freedom to us, was a hunting ground for them. And while even the largest and most powerful birds of prey could not threaten our species as a whole, they could, and did, prey upon the most vulnerable. They could steal our children. One of the most chilling pieces of evidence for this comes from a place called Tong in Africa. It is the fossilized skull of a child, an infant Australopithecus africanus. For years, its death was a mystery, but careful study revealed telltale marks, punctures and scrapes on the delicate bone of the eye sockets. The verdict was undeniable. The Tong child was killed and carried off by a massive raptor, its life ended by the crushing grip of talons and the piercing strike of a beak. This is not some distant, unbelievable horror. Even in our modern age, there are documented cases of large eagles attempting to snatch human children. A similar story, woven into myth but rooted in a terrible truth, is told among the Maori, the indigenous people of New Zealand. Their legends speak of the Puakai,
a monstrous bird that hunted humans. Scientists are now convinced this was no myth. This was the Haast's eagle, the largest eagle known to have ever existed. Weighing up to 14 kilograms, with a wingspan of 3 meters, it was an apex predator of supreme power and aggression. When the first Maori settlers arrived, they began to hunt the eagle's primary food source, the giant, flightless moa. With its traditional prey disappearing, the fearsome eagle simply switched to a new target. It began to hunt the hunters, or more specifically, its fate was sealed. Another ghost in the long history of extinction.
The litany of vanquished rivals continues across the globe. In the lost world of North America, our ancestors encountered prehistoric hyenas and a predator whose very name sends a shiver down the spine, the dire wolf, Canis dirus. For thousands of years, these powerful pack hunters thrived, perfectly adapted to their environment. They faced few challenges to their supremacy until a new two-legged creature crossed the land bridge from Asia. The dire wolves, who had survived the worst of the Ice Age, could not survive alongside us.
This pattern, this sad and repeating history of confrontation and eventual annihilation defines our ascent. The cave bear, the saber-toothed cat, the Haast's eagle, the dire wolf. One by one, the great beasts of the ancient world fell. They were not wiped out by ice or fire or cosmic cataclysm. They were outcompeted, outhunted, and ultimately erased by a creature whose greatest weapon was not its claw or its tooth, but its mind. And we are left to wonder, as we stand alone on the summit of the food chain, what was truly lost.
In the grand, brutal theater of prehistory, a curious biological detail may have tipped the scales of our survival. In a world teeming with predators larger, stronger, and faster than ourselves, humankind endured in part because we were simply not a very tempting meal. The stark mathematics of the hunt were not in our favor as prey. A single horse, for instance, offered a predator nearly 10 times the caloric reward of even the most well-fed human. We were, in the cold calculus of nature, a pursuit of diminishing returns, a creature whose flesh offered little fuel for the fires of another's survival.
This same logic extends to the darkest corners of our own ancestral history.
The specter of cannibalism haunts our deep past. The evidence is etched into bone, a grim testament to desperate times. It was a reality, but perhaps not in the way we imagine. These were not widespread customs, but isolated incidents born of starvation's cruel necessity. For an early human to hunt another was a profoundly risky endeavor. It meant stalking a creature with the same cunning, the same capacity for tool use, the same desperate will to live. And for what reward? A meal of such low nutritional value that the energy expended in the chase would scarcely be replenished. The ancient proverb, "Man is wolf to man," was not yet a matter of diet. If we were not to become food for one another, we were destined to become something else entirely.
And so, as millennia passed and our dominion over the natural world grew, we began to ask a different question. In the world we have built, who is our apex predator now? What is the greatest threat to a human life? Is it the hungry lion, a specter of tooth and claw stalking the savannah? No. Is it the silent, patient crocodile, an ancient killing machine lurking just beneath the water's surface? Also no. Perhaps it is the venomous reptile, a creature whose bite can end a life in minutes, or the swarms of deadly insects that carry invisible plagues. That answer, too, would be incorrect. The truth, when we allow ourselves to truly confront it, is a far more intimate and devastating revelation. To find the greatest enemy of humankind, we need no expedition into the wild. We need only a mirror.
For the most dangerous creature on Earth, the one responsible for more human suffering and death than any other in history, is us.
No one is capable of inflicting upon us the kind of harm we so readily inflict upon ourselves. Having declared ourselves the pinnacle of creation, we have invented more ways to kill and committed more acts of profound evil than any other living community since the dawn of life. A wild predator does not kill at a shared waterhole, for there is an innate understanding that such a violation would bring more harm than good, shattering a delicate truce necessary for all. No animal kills for reasons other than sustenance, the right to reproduce, or the raw struggle for survival. Not even a creature driven mad by rabies would conceive of killing for sport, for the perverse pleasure of a trophy to be hung on a wall, a skin to be laid upon a floor.
Yet our civilization, for all its art and science, has elevated the act of killing to an almost mundane ritual. We have built industries on it, ideologies around it, and histories defined by it. We are the only species that wages war on its own kind over lines on a map or words in a book. We are the only species that will extinguish another for convenience or profit. In our quest to master the world, we have become masters of our own destruction, turning the very intelligence that secured our survival into the ultimate tool of our own undoing. We have become the predator we were never meant to be, and our chosen prey is, all too often, ourselves. In a world that grows ever more predictable, humanity seems possessed by a restless spirit, endlessly devising new ways to court the ruin of its own civilization. But for how long will the natural world permit us this grand experiment, this assertion of dominance at the expense of all else? How long can we gamble with our own destiny in this way? Perhaps not long at all. Whispers persist, carried down through millennia in texts far removed from the cold scrutiny of science. They speak of a time when human beings lived for centuries. Of course, for such extraordinary claims, no tangible proof has yet been unearthed. Yet one thing is certain: the span of a human life has not been a constant. It has ebbed and flowed with the great tides of history.
To understand our present, we must exhume the past and ask a simple yet profound question. How long did our ancestors truly live?
Perhaps the most enduring myths of longevity are woven into the fabric of our oldest spiritual traditions. The Book of Genesis, in particular, paints a portrait of an antediluvian world populated by patriarchs of impossible age. Adam, the first man, and his immediate descendants, their lives are measured not in decades, but in centuries. An analysis of the Old Testament's text reveals a staggering average. For the first 10 generations, from Adam to Noah, the human lifespan is said to have stretched to an average of 850 years.
But after the Great Flood, something changes. A shadow falls. Noah's sons and lineage, the number continues its relentless decline. The scripture offers a spiritual diagnosis. This dwindling of life is a consequence of sin, a reflection of the growing weight of human failing. This ancient narrative stands in stark contrast to our modern assumption that the further back we travel in time, the shorter, more brutal, and more unforgiving life becomes. And in many ways, that assumption holds true. Yet, the archaeological record is not without its own surprises, its own hints that exceptional longevity has always been a human possibility. When scientists seek to unravel these mysteries, they are most often confronted with the silent testimony of bone. To find preserved hair or skin from an individual who died centuries, let alone thousands of years ago, is an extraordinary rarity. But even these precious fragments cannot give us a definitive answer. They cannot tell us, with certainty,
the age at which a person's story ended.
We see this same ambiguity in the living. The markers of age are profoundly inconsistent. One person may see their hair turn to silver or begin to recede in their early 20s. Another may reach their 50th year with skin that remains smooth, retaining the supple elasticity of youth. It is this very human variance that creates a fog of uncertainty for paleoanthropologists.
When examining the remains of an individual who lived past the age of 45 or 50, the potential for error grows substantially. The fusion of bone plates, a reliable indicator of age in the young, is long complete. Scientists are left to read the far more subtle signs of wear and tear, of skeletal degeneration. They can often say only that death occurred after 40 or after 50. The precise number of years remains elusive, and the deeper into antiquity they dig, the fewer well-preserved specimens they have to guide them. The story of our ancestors' lives becomes a mosaic of fragments, a puzzle with most of its pieces lost to the earth.
We are left suspended between the grandeur of myth and the cautious, incomplete data of science. We search for the secrets to a longer life, even as we question the wisdom of our own. In the end, the quest to understand how long our ancestors lived is a reflection of our own deepest anxieties, a desire to know if we are the culmination of a long, slow decline, or merely a single, fleeting chapter in a story far grander and more ancient than we can possibly imagine.
To grasp the lifespan of a ghost, one must rely on shadows and echoes, societies of immense bureaucracy, of technical and cultural sophistication, and they left behind a trail of written sources. We have the grand compositions of authors, the meticulous scientific treatises, the private memoirs, and the cold official documents of the state. Yet, when we try to calculate the simple length of a life from these remnants, we encounter a profound statistical distortion.
The ghost that haunts all our figures is the staggering rate of infant mortality. In the classical world, it is believed this rate could reach a devastating 30%, perhaps even more. So, when modern studies conclude that the average life expectancy in ancient Rome was a mere 30 to 35 years, we are not looking at a world of elders at 30. That number is an illusion, dragged down by the sheer volume of lives that barely began. The 30-year-old Roman was not a wizened patriarch, he was a survivor. If a child could endure the gauntlet of disease and misfortune to reach the age of 15 or 20, their path could easily stretch on for several more decades.
Of course, the quality of that path depended entirely on the circumstances of one's birth. The wealthy ate better, lived in cleaner conditions, and had access to the most advanced medicine their world could offer. Within the ruling families, examples of long life are not a rarity at all. They are an expectation. Studying the ancient Egyptian papyri, we discover pharaohs who lived to an age considered venerable even today. The great conqueror, Thutmose III of the 18th dynasty, died at the age of 56. Queen Hatshepsut passed away when she was 50, but evidence suggests her life was cut short by a host of serious ailments, including diabetes and bone cancer.
And then there were the true titans, the patriarchs who seemed to defy their era. Ramses II, the great builder and warrior, lived to be 90 years old. Psamtik I, according to the sources, ruled his nation for 54 years, having already ascended to the throne as a mature adult. These were lives of incredible duration, testaments to the power of privilege. But such longevity was not exclusively the domain of royalty. Egyptologist Michael Zimmerman of the University of Manchester examined some 300 mummies from ancient Egypt. He asserts that among them were several individuals who had lived to be 80, even 90 years old. Their survival, however, came at a price.
Their bodies were a catalog of chronic diseases, a record of a long and difficult fight against the frailties of the human form.
In ancient Greece, we find a different kind of evidence. An analysis of their sources reveals that during a general military mobilization, the state called upon all able-bodied men between the ages of 18 and 60. This simple administrative fact speaks volumes. It means that men well past 50 were still viewed as strong, capable, and fit for the rigors of a campaign. Judging the lifespan of the common peasantry is far more difficult, but we know with certainty that the Greeks, especially the educated classes, placed enormous value on physical culture and a healthy existence.
This obsession with balance and form was most pronounced among the thinkers and artists who defined their age. For them, a long life was not just a matter of chance, but the result of a disciplined existence. The mathematician Pythagoras died at the age of 75. Hippocrates, the very founder of modern medicine, lived to be 90. The philosopher Democritus and the great playwright Sophocles both saw their 90th year, as did the poet Xenophanes, who lived to 95. These were not just lives, they were epochs. Men who laid the foundations of Western thought did so over a span of time we would find extraordinary today.
Ultimately, the cold arithmetic of averages tells us very little about the human spirit. It tells a story of fragility, but it obscures the story of resilience. The true measure of a life, then as now, is not found in the median, but in the remarkable enduring potential of the individual to persist against the odds, to witness the turning of the seasons, and to leave a mark on a world that is, by its very nature, designed to forgive.
The philosopher Gorgias, they say, drew breath for 108 years, a lifetime that bordered on the mythical, even in ancient Greece. But across the Ionian Sea, in the burgeoning world of Rome, the unforgiving calculus of daily life was often crueler. For the common man, the average lifespan was grimly short. Yet, even here, there were pockets of remarkable longevity. The sources tell us that the most seasoned legionaries, the legendary triarii who formed the final line of battle, were men who averaged 45 years of age, grizzled veterans who had seen decades of war and survived.
For the simple farmers and city dwellers of the Roman Empire, objective data is almost entirely lost to time. Their lives and deaths passed largely unrecorded. But we can glimpse the lifespans of the more affluent classes by examining the very structure of their society, the rigid ladder of power. The Romans believed that the governance of a great state was a duty reserved for the experienced, the proven, and the wealthy. To this end, they established strict property and age requirements for anyone seeking public office. To become a quaestor, a treasurer managing the state's coffers, one had to have lived at least 27 years. The office of praetor, a deputy consul presiding over judicial and civil affairs, was barred to any man younger than 40, and the highest office of all, that of consul, could only be held by a citizen who was no younger than 42. It was a system built on the assumption that a man would live long enough to acquire the wisdom necessary to lead. In 1994, a team of scholars turned their attention to the silent testimony of stone, examining more than 300 tombstones belonging to male citizens of the Roman Empire. The results were startling. The data revealed that their average age at the time of death was 72 years, and if one inscription is to be believed, true supercentenarians were not entirely unknown even then. This archaeological evidence finds an echo in the literary world. The great work of Pliny the Elder, his Natural History, a colossal encyclopedia compiled around the year 77, provides another window. Within its pages, Pliny speaks of several long-lived individuals known to him. He writes, for instance, that Terentia, the wife of the great politician Marcus Tullius Cicero, was at that moment 103 years old. He mentions another woman, a certain Clodia, wife of the jurist Auphilius,
who allegedly reached the incredible age of 115.
Of course, from a modern scientific standpoint, such sources must be handled with care. An error in transcription, a misunderstanding in translation, or simple exaggeration could easily have crept into these ancient accounts. Such mistakes, after all, are not unique to antiquity. Consider the more recent case from the Soviet Union of a shepherd from the mountain regions of Azerbaijan named Shirali Muslimov. According to some records, he lived for 168 years. More astonishingly, it was claimed he fathered another child at the age of 137. Now, extreme longevity in that region is not unheard of. It's believed Shirali's own parents lived past 100, and his daughter recently crossed that same threshold. Yet, the great Caucasian long liver was never entered into the Guinness Book of Records for one simple reason. He had no birth certificate. Some researchers now believe his age may have been exaggerated by as much as 50 years, but even if that were true, Shirali Muslimov remains an example of unique human endurance.
His story perfectly illustrates the historian's dilemma. The absence of verifiable proof casts a long shadow of doubt. And as we move forward in time, the statistics themselves become warped by catastrophe. The great shadow of pestilence that fell across the medieval world left an indelible mark on the human lifespan. Epidemics that raged across the globe fundamentally altered the demographic landscape, making survival itself a victory. The human quest for a long life is as old as civilization itself, a thread woven through myth, history, and science. But the desire to count the years, to prove them, to hold them up as a quantifiable achievement, that is a distinctly modern obsession. And in the space between a life lived and a life recorded, the truth can become as ephemeral as a ghost.
The past is often imagined as a brutal landscape where life was invariably short, a fleeting candle flame extinguished by disease, famine, or violence. But the bones of our ancestors tell a more complicated, and at times, a more hopeful story. In Central and Western Europe, the devastating waves of plague were an undeniable reality, reshaping the very fabric of society. Yet even in these darkest of times, there were those who endured, who saw the turning of many seasons and lived to hold their grandchildren.
In 2018, a novel technique developed by Australian archaeologist Christine Cave began to read the stories etched into the very enamel of our ancestors' teeth. By meticulously analyzing the degree of wear, she could peer back through the centuries, bypassing the often unreliable state of skeletal remains. Applying this method to 3 Anglo-Saxon cemeteries in England, she uncovered a startling truth. Among the people laid to rest between the years 475 and 630, it was not uncommon to find individuals who had lived past 70 years of age. They had survived the perils of infancy, the fevers of youth, and the hardships of middle age to become elders in their communities.
Of course, for the vast sweep of the medieval period, any truly reliable statistics can only be drawn from the lives of the nobility, whose births, marriages, and deaths were meticulously recorded in chronicles and court documents. And this data tells a dramatic story of fortune's wheel. For the European aristocracy of the 13th century, life could stretch to a surprising 64 years on average. But then, the world changed. The 14th century brought a shadow that fell across the continent, the Great Pestilence. In its wake, the average age of a nobleman plummeted to just 45. A century later, as the world slowly, painfully recovered, it would climb again, reaching an unprecedented 69 years.
But these figures, even for the privileged, are distorted by a single, heartbreaking truth: the overwhelming specter of childhood mortality. The low average lifespan of the past wasn't because everyone died at 30.
it was because so many never left the cradle. This statistical ghost haunted humanity for millennia. Even as late as the 19th century, a time of steam and iron, the first year of life was the most dangerous. In Belgium, nearly 18% of infants would not see their first birthday. In France, that number rose to 21%. In Germany, it was a staggering 23.5%. 1 child in 4 lost.
The Great Shift, the dramatic extension of life that we now take for granted, began only in the 20th century, fueled by revolutions in medicine and industry. In the middle of that century, a time within living memory for some, global infant mortality still stood at 16.2%, with an average life expectancy of a mere 48 years. Yet by the year 2015, the transformation was profound. Infant mortality had fallen to just 3%, and the average human could expect to live to 73.
To truly grasp the length of our journey, however, we must look further back, into the deep time before written records, before even civilization itself. Here, the evidence is scarce, the conclusions necessarily cautious. The very tradition of burial only began to take hold in the Middle Paleolithic, between 300,000 and 30,000 years ago, and determining the biological age of a person who died tens of thousands of years ago is an immense challenge. Climate, diet, disease, and injury all leave their mark, warping the evidence.
For our ancient relatives, the Neanderthals, the Australopithecines, life was a frantic, fleeting affair. Scientists believe their average existence rarely stretched beyond 20 or 23 years. The first anatomically modern humans were not much different. Their lives seldom exceeded 26 years. A slow, almost imperceptible climb began in the Upper Paleolithic, from 50,000 to 10,000 years ago. A man might, on average, reach 33. A woman, tragically burdened by the immense dangers of childbirth, only 28. The Mesolithic age brought a marginal gain, 35 years for men, 29 for women. And in the Neolithic, with the dawn of agriculture, a man's life expectancy fell slightly to 33, while a woman's crept towards.
For millennia, progress was measured not in years, but in seasons. Each generation gaining a few precious months, a fragile foothold against the darkness. This slow, uneven ascent continued until the 18th century, yet life remained profoundly precarious. What we now call a full life is a breathtakingly new invention, a privilege bought by the accumulated knowledge of countless generations who lived and died in a world we can barely comprehend. Our 70 or 80 years are not a given, but an inheritance, a testament to a relentless struggle against the odds, stretching back to the very dawn of our species.
For the vast sweep of human history, the horizon of a life was a shockingly near thing. A man's time on this earth, on average, rarely extended beyond 39 years. It was a life lived in fast forward, a fleeting chapter between the darkness of birth and the finality of death. And for women, the journey was often even more brief, the brutal realities of childbirth and existence exacting a heavy toll. This grim calculus was, for millennia, considered the unchangeable order of things. Any period where the scales tipped, where women outlived men, was seen by scholars not as progress, but as an anomaly. Then, a new sound echoed across the globe. The rhythm of the steam engine, the hum of the factory, the quiet scratching of a scientist's pen. The Industrial Revolution and the scientific enlightenment that fueled it did not simply change human society. It fundamentally rewrote the biological contract of our species. Today, the average man can expect to see his 73rd year, and women, in a remarkable reversal of ancient fortune, now typically live 6 years longer still.
But to truly understand this leap,
we must look past our own achievements and consult our oldest relatives. The study of primates offers a deep ancestral mirror, reflecting the fundamental blueprint of our lives. The life cycle of all primates, ourselves included, unfolds in a series of distinct acts: the embryonic, the dependency of childhood, the turbulence of adolescence, the reproductive prime, and finally, the post-reproductive years. It is in this final act that humanity takes a unique stage. This extended twilight, this era after our primary biological purpose is fulfilled, is a gift granted almost exclusively to us. It provides decades of life that our closest cousins, the great apes, will never know.
Looking back into the deep past, to the age of the Upper Paleolithic, we see a subtle yet profound stretching of time. With each passing epoch, every one of these life stages began to lengthen. Researchers have uncovered a fascinating correlation. The longer a human culture's childhood and adolescence, the more expansive its post-reproductive period becomes. It's a direct relationship. Some scientists now even speculate that the prolonged period of infantilism seen in modern youth is not a societal flaw, but the signature of the next turn in our evolutionary spiral.
This has led to a view of humanity not as a monolith, but as a species diverging along two distinct temporal paths. The first is the ancient rhythm, a life lived at a faster tempo. These are individuals who mature early and consequently age early. This pattern, born in the Stone Age, is considered the traditional human model, still prevalent today among certain indigenous peoples of the North. The second path is a newer, slower cadence. Here, individuals mature late and age gracefully. Their skeletal systems take longer to fully form, and the relentless march of age-related decay is held at bay for longer. In some populations, we can even observe a third, intermediate type, a blend of the old and the new.
Yet, for all we have learned, the story of our lifespan is riddled with frustrating enigmas. One of the most persistent is the paradox of the Iron Age. For decades, the logic seemed unshakable. The quality of life directly dictates its length and our physical stature. Better nutrition, fewer wars, less disease, these should create taller, longer-lived people. But the archaeological record of the Iron Age defies this neat equation. As humanity mastered iron, people grew shorter, and they lived no longer than their Bronze Age predecessors. Why? Neither dramatic climate shifts nor unique settlement patterns offer a satisfying answer. The bones remain silent, a testament to a mystery we have yet to solve. It is a humbling reminder that the narrative of our own existence is far more complex than we imagine, a story whose most crucial chapters may still be unwritten. It was a paradox etched in bone, a riddle whispered from the skeletal remains of our ancestors. As humanity transitioned from the wandering life of the hunter-gatherer to the settled world of the farmer, a strange inconsistency emerged. Their average lifespan increased, yet their physical stature diminished. The key to this mystery, it turned out, was not in the great long bones of the leg, but in something far smaller: the meticulous examination of their dental enamel.
This microscopic archive of an individual's life told a new story. The teeth of these early farmers bore a grim signature: peculiar infections and enamel damage from tartar, a direct result of a diet heavy in carbohydrates. They were, on the whole, eating more consistently, which allowed them to live longer lives. But this agricultural revolution was a double-edged sword. The very act of settling down, of creating villages and towns, led to unprecedented population density. This new proximity, this crowding, became a fertile ground for infectious diseases to thrive and spread as never before.
The shorter stature, then, was not a sign of malnutrition, but a consequence of a body constantly at war. A childhood spent fighting off waves of infection meant vital energy was diverted from growth to survival. It is a stark reminder that the arc of human history is a series of trade-offs. The quality of our food, the diseases we endure, the very structure of our societies. These forces have always shaped not just how long we live, but how we live.
Today we stand insulated by the marvels of medicine and technology, our lives immeasurably more comfortable. We have vanquished many of the ancient plagues and pushed the boundaries of our own mortality. But as we reach for lifespans of almost mythic proportion, one must wonder what new, unseen compromises we are making in this eternal bargain between progress and peril.